When we talk about research, we talk about approaches through which we achieve our objectives. And approaches have to be very unambiguous and also systematic. What we mean by systematic is that approaches have to be very well planned and they have to be very well structured. One such emergent and interesting type of research approach may be action research. Friends, welcome to this session. Today in this session, we will be talking about action research design. Our learning objectives of the session revolves around understanding the meaning and characteristics of action research, and also we will be briefly trying to understand problem selection in action research, formulation of action research, tools and techniques that are used in action research, and even we will try to understand data collection, analysis and interpretation with regards to action research. David Tripp 2005 says action research is difficult to define, and he gives two linked reasons. First reason he gives is that action research is a natural process, that it comes in many different forms and it appears to be different for different contexts also. And the second reason he gives is it has been developed differently for different applications. Further, he says almost immediately upon Levin's coining the term in the literature, that is action research, which has been coined by Levin, it has been observed that the term for long has been used for different processes and different meanings. Number one, diagnostic purpose in the context of participant. Number two, in the context of empirical, and even in the context of experimental. Let us look at one simple definition of action research. This is according to Kogan 2011. According to him, action research is an emergent inquiry process that integrates theory and action to couple scientific knowledge with existing organizational knowledge and to address real organizational problems together with the people of the system under inquiry. If we look at the definition, we'll understand that the basic idea in action research is to integrate theory and action, and when we do so, we'll try to link it with the scientific knowledge that is existing to the organizational knowledge and even to address real organizational problems. And while doing so, we involve the people, in the sense the people who are involved with the situation, with the problem, or engaged in the research. According to Annie Burns 2015, action research is the superordinate term for a set of approaches to research which at the same time systematically investigate a given social situation and promote democratic change and collaborative participation. Here his focus is on the collaborative participation that he is talking about. Action research involves a self-reflective, systematic and critical approach to inquiry by participants who are at the same time members of the research community. Here the point that we need to understand is that the community of the researchers are not the outsiders to the situation, they are the insiders to the situation. The aim is to identify problematic situations or issues considered by the participants themselves to be worthy of investigation in order to bring about critically informed changes in practice. Action research, as defined by Peter Reason and Hilary Broadbury 2001, is a participatory democratic process concerned with developing practical knowledge in the pursuit of worthwhile human purposes grounded in a participatory worldview which we believe is emerging at this historical moment. It seeks to bring together action and reflection, theory and practice, in participation with others in the pursuit of practical solutions to the issues of pressing concern to the people, and more generally the flourishing of individual persons and their communities. The most important thing here is it is bringing together action and reflection and theory and practice. Let us now understand, before we go further, process of action research. The process of action research can be taken as consisting of 4 phases. It is as per Annie Burns. These 4 phases of the process of action research are: number 1 is plan, number 2 is act, number 3 is observe, and number 4 is reflection. So these 4 phases, that is plan, act, observe and reflection, consist of process of action research, which is again a continuous process. The first process or the stage, that is plan, is at this stage we need to ask few questions like, for example, what problematic areas for investigation and change can be identified in the social situation, and what changes to current practices are anticipated, and what outcomes are desired. At the same time, who is involved in this situation and what resources are needed to handle all these things. This is about when we talk about the first stage, that is the stage number 1, that is the plan stage. When we go in the process, the second stage, that is act stage, where the action is taking place, here again we are trying to address few important questions, that is what strategies and actions should be put in place. This is very important thing. Then if we do this, then what is distinctive in this action? What is different in this action, and how will it lead to change? The change that we are thinking will improve the situation, and how will it lead to the change that we need to address? Then what ethical issues are involved? We need to look into the ethical issues according to the situation also, and in order to do so, what evidence is emerging for renewed action? That also we will be addressing, that is at the second stage of process, that is act stage. Then after this is the third stage, that is observe stage. At this stage again we need to address few important pertinent questions. They are, what evidence about action is required? That we need to address. Then what type of data gathering techniques should be used? The data gathering techniques, the tools that we are using, also we need to understand and identify at this stage. And further we need to address also what additional forms of data are needed, what extra data we are needed, and also what kinds of interim analysis possible. Interim analysis in the sense on the site at the time of research, as because the action research is a process oriented research, in the middle of the process also the kind of analysis that is possible for us also we will be looking at. And this stage we call it the observe stage, that is the third stage. Now coming to the fourth stage, that is reflection stage of the process of action research. Here also again we need to look into few important pertinent questions. They are, what evidence is emerging and or re-emerging from systematic observation that we have done? We need to understand ourselves what evidence is emerging out of this observation that we have been doing after the action that we have taken. Then what intended and unintended, sometimes unintended outcomes also are identifiable as a consequence of the intervention, and what reformations of the problem are required. When we observe certain things, then what reformations of the problem are required? Then what ethical issues are arising from the research? That also again we need to address at this stage of the reflection. And lastly, what balances in judgment need to be achieved? This is the fourth stage. Altogether we say, when we say action research as a process, it has 4 distinctive stages, that is plan, act, observe and reflection. Now let us move on to further. Action research has a complex history because it is not a single academic, as we all know, it is not a single academic discipline, but an approach to research that has emerged over time from a broad range of fields. It has been very well suitably used in various disciplines like anthropology, psychology, social psychology, management studies, social work, including education. The approach of action research has been suitably, very well has been used. As my training is in education, I may use few examples from the action from the field of education when I am trying to explain the process or the steps of action research. Let us go further. When we talk about educational situations, these are some of the situations that come to our mind, like for example, students' poor ability to write. As a teacher, a school teacher, a class teacher, a classroom teacher finds it as a serious problem for him when students show poor ability to write. This is a concern of him. And further, suppose students show lack of understanding of basic concepts in mathematics. For instance, a mathematics teacher will have a serious concern when students are not showing lack of understanding of basic mathematics concepts. And sometimes in some schools, some teachers may face certain issues, like some challenges like children are coming late to the class, or sometimes they are irregular in terms of their attendance. Maybe in some rural areas we will see these problems. Even such problems are a serious concern for a classroom teacher. And in some of the schools, in some of the classrooms, the teachers or even sometimes parents face problem when we talk with children. That is the problem of communication with the children. Children won't communicate when it comes to the normal day-to-day activities in terms of a classroom engagement. So therefore, even for a problem of communication, teacher is worried. And of course, when we talk about education, we talk about quality education, and one of the important indicator of quality education is the academic achievement of the students. And if students are not performing well in academic tests or grades or exams, the low academic achievement is also an important concern. It bothers the teachers. Now, such situations can very well be handled by someone who is insider to such situations, that is a teacher. And there can be also a quick and scientific solutions to such problems if we try. And a teacher is very well positioned compared to others to solve such problems. Of course, maybe sometimes individually or sometimes in groups. Teacher is in a better position to do research or to address these type of issues compared to an outsider researcher. Maybe sometimes the teachers, those who want to engage in action research, would like to ask a few questions, like for example, if I take up action research, does it require me to learn any statistical procedures? Do I need to know the technical know-how, etc.? Let us look further. A very interesting remark on a teachers is made by Hubbard and Power, 1999. They say, observing students closely, analyzing their needs and adjusting the curriculum to fit the needs of all students have been always most important skills demonstrated by finest teachers. And that is why someone has very well said that action research, that is teacher research, is action research is a natural extension of good teaching. Actually, the idea of action research is that educational problems and issues are best identified and investigated where the action is, that is at the classroom. In this context, when we are talking about the educational issues or educational problem, the action is where the action is, that is at the classroom or at the school level. When we talk about educational issues or educational problems, just now as we have discussed, we can categorize these issues or challenges or problems into various, like for example academic. So for example, academic challenges are like for example classroom situation. A given classroom situation can be an academic situation. Poor methods of teaching can be an academic situation. Questioning by the students, by the students inside the classroom, the way they are questioning, the kind of questions they are asking can also be a challenge that is to be considered under academic. Then lack of study habits on the part of students can also be considered as an academic issue. Classroom climate, overall classroom climate, the social climate or psychological climate or discipline. So these also may be considered under academic. And student discipline as a whole, the student discipline in the classroom, student discipline in the school can also be an academic issue. And of course, problems of disabled children and the like can also come under academic. Then In similar fashion, we can understand that social problems, social area of our problems like late coming to the class, to the school, not doing homework may be considered under social category. Poor attendance to the regular classes can also be considered as under social category a challenge. Lack of cooperation of students whenever teacher gives some assignments or some project, so students are non-cooperating, and lack of physical amenities inside the school, so can also come under this category. Similarly, curricular area like for example textbooks, time-bound syllabus completion, learning competencies and lack of teacher handbooks and the like, they can come under curricular area of challenges. And when it comes to evaluation, for example, the type of test we do or give, the types of achievement, unit test or diagnostic test, or the periodicity with which we are giving these tests, and even scoring and marking and the like, because these days parents are very much showing interest in how much children are getting scores and grades and others. So therefore, this area also is an important area of concern for a teacher. Administrative issues can also be taken, like for example planning, training, framing timetable for exam and the like. Even as a teacher, professional area also can be considered, like for example self-growth of a teacher, his desirable attitudes, motivation, leadership and the like can also be taken. Now, let us understand now, after understanding the background of action research, as I was telling, different disciplines follow different research questions, and they take up research topics for doing action research. They may slightly vary the steps of action research. Here I am talking about the steps in action research in general. We can see the first step in action research is identification of the problem. Again, as I said, the problem identification comes basically from the field where the problem is, and this identification of the problem is by the practitioner. That is why many times action research is also called as practitioner's research. If teacher is doing this action research, it's a teacher's problem. Then once we identify the problem, we in the sense the teacher himself, when he identifies the problem, the second step, the next step is pinpointing the problem. Usually the problem will be in the broadest sense we talk. Then if we have to take up for action research, we need to pinpoint that problem. That means the second stage, the second step in action research is pinpointing the problem. Once you pinpoint the problem, the next step, that is the third step, is diagnosing the causes of the problem. There can be various causes of the problem that you have identified, you have pinpointed. Your experience, your observation, your learning of the field will tell you something about it. It will give you a hint that these may be the causes, probable causes, possible causes. So one has to, the researcher, the teacher has to diagnose the causes of the problem, various causes of the problem. Then based on this, the next step is formulation of action hypothesis. This is considered very important and interesting step when we do action research. Formulation of action hypothesis has to be based on, again, some experience of that particular teacher when he is conducting this research. Then once formulation of hypothesis is done, we call it action hypothesis. When we are doing action research, the hypothesis simply we try to call it as an action hypothesis. That is why this step is called formulation of action hypothesis. Then the next step is designing the action plan. This is when we are talking about the process of action research, the act stage of action research, this is exactly the designing of the action plan. What exactly we are going to do is the important step here. That is step number 5, is designing the action plan. Once we design the action plan based on our experience, our understanding, our possible solutions that we are looking at, the next step is implementation of the action program. We will have some action program. Suppose you have something in your mind and you feel that by the intervention of this particular thing, I am going to have the solution to the problem that I have in my mind, but that particular thing you will try and implement and see. So therefore, the next step is implementation of the action program. Once you do this implementation of the action program, the last step that's in action research is evaluation of the action program. One has to evaluate where we have implemented, how we have pinpointed the problem, whether what we have diagnosed the causes of the problem, whether we went right or wrong, whether our formulation of the hypothesis is correct or wrong, our designing of the action plan, how it was, then did we do well when we try to implement the action program. Evaluation is very crucial because it again gives input to the further, because action research is a never ending process, again it becomes a cyclical and our input to the next problem. So therefore evaluation as one of the important steps becomes a very important thing. So therefore these are basic steps in action research. If I have to repeat, the first step is identification of the problem, second is pinpointing the problem, the third step is diagnosing the causes of the problem, and fourth one is formulation of action hypothesis, and the fifth one is designing the action plan, then next one is implementation of the action program, and finally evaluation of the action program. Now let us go further and see how this broad action research problems can be converted into researchable problems. Let us say, for example, late submission of homework by students. This can be considered as a broad action research problem. And also, say for example, another problem like for example, consistent low achievement or academic achievement by the students can also be considered as a broad action research problem. Unruly behavior of the students in the classroom. This can be considered as a broad action research, though it needs to be pinpointed. Poor attendance of the students, overall it's a general nature, so therefore this can also be considered as a broad action research problem. Then lack of reading habits among teachers, for example, teachers themselves, they do not have say for example lack the extra material that needs to be studied. As a head of the institution, as a principal, one is looking and saying that the teachers are lacking the reading habit or enriched material, for example, or say for example lack of cooperation among the teachers. These can be taken as, or similar things can be taken as broad action research problems. Now let us see how we can go from here. Once we do this, pinpointing the broad action research problems becomes very important. Let us take few examples. Again I will be taking examples from the field of education. Let us take a broad area of the problem as consistent low achievement in academic subjects. Now this needs to be further elaborated, pinpointed. Now when we say consistent low achievement in academic subjects, it can be low achievement of students we are talking about. Then when we are saying low achievement of the students, in which class we are talking about, or in which subject we are talking about, in which unit we are talking about, or which basic competency we are talking about. When we are clear with these basic things, then again few questions comes to our mind. When we say in which class, we may say for example 3rd standard section A students we are talking about, their low achievement. Then in which subject, when we say, maybe let us say for example arithmetic, or when we say arithmetic, in which unit if we have to say for example addition. Then which basic competency if someone is interested, just for the sake of pinpointing further, addition of 2 digits with carrying over, if some teacher says this. So therefore from a consistent low achievement in academic subjects, a pinpointed problem can be read as difficulty of 3rd A section students in the addition of 2-digit numbers, that is carrying in arithmetic. Or in other words, in question form also the same thing can be pinpointed as how to improve 3rd year students in addition with carry. This can be taken as a pinpointed problem. Let us quickly look at another example. For example, let us take lack of reading habits among teachers. This can be a broad area of the problem. When we say lack of reading habits among the teachers, then which group of teachers? Now we are trying to pinpoint the problem. We need to say which group of teachers, what type of reading material they are lacking, then in which subject area we are interested. Then answer to this is, say for example, if teachers we are talking about our primary school test, then which group of teachers means primary school teachers. What type of reading material we are talking means maybe enriched content material. Then in which subject area, maybe science subject. Let us say now the broad area of the problem, that is lack of reading habits among teachers, now we are trying to pinpoint as primary school teachers do not possess the reading habit of enriched content material in science. Or in a question form, the same thing can be put as how to improve the reading habit of primary school teachers. This can be taken as a pinpointed problem. Now quickly let us take one more example, how we bring from broad area to the pinpointed area. Let us take this problem as poor attendance of the students. When we say poor attendance of the students, in which class or in which season? Sometimes seasonally students don't attend or attend less, or how often they are absent if they are absent. These questions, if we ask ourselves, we may come to know, for example, that in which class, for example, 6th standard A section, and in which season, say for example, teacher has observed the students or majority of the students are absent from the month January to March. Maybe seasonally it is affecting. Then how often they are absent? Maybe weekly 3 to 4 times, very irregular if they are. Then from poor attendance of the students, broad area of the problem, now we are moving to the pinpointed problem as more than 50% of 6th standard A section students do not attend the school regularly from January to March. This can be taken as a pinpointed problem. Now in other form also can be given in a question form, like for example, how to improve attendance in class 6th A. Now after seeing how we move from broad area of the problem to pinpointed problem, let us go further. Let us have illustration of identifying the possible causes. Say for example, the pinpointed problem is number one example. The first example that we have taken is difficulty faced by standard 3A students in the addition of 2-digit numbers in arithmetic. If this is the pinpointed problem, a teacher, a researcher, a classroom teacher whose problem is this, he also has to have possible causes. Say for example, the possible causes in this context are the students were not regular to the class. When this being taught, the students were not regular to the class. This could be one cause. Another cause is inadequate basic skills in addition. Basically they come from a background where they have inadequate basic skills in addition. And also another cause may be inadequate concept of place value. Many a time this can also be one of the important cause. And lack of supervised study by the teacher. This can also be a cause. A teacher is not giving sufficient time and he is not supervising how children are learning when it comes to mathematics. So these, if we say, become possible causes. Now if we move further to another example, that is pinpointed example, the example number 2, that we have seen that primary school teachers do not develop the habit of reading enriched content material in science. Now again, the person who is doing this research has to find out the possible causes again. The possible causes in this situation may be lack of availability of suitable books in first place. This can be one of the important causes. Then lack of interest in reading among teachers could be another cause, and another cause could be it is not compulsory for them to read extra material, so therefore teachers may be saying no, we are not. So therefore these are some of the, and or lack of time for extra reading. Many times teachers are burdened or overburdened with the normal activities, so they find hardly time for extra reading. So these could be the possible causes of the problem that we have in our hand. Now let us have illustration of another example. Now the third example was more than 50% of 6th standard students do not attend the school regularly. Now what may be the possible causes? Now when we look at the causes, again the teacher has to bring out these causes. Classes are not interesting. This could be the causes. Then another is parents involve them, that means children, parents involve children in household work could be another cause. Poor health condition may be, the children's health condition may be another cause. Poverty condition could be another thing, or afraid of the punishment of the school or by the teachers could be, we don't know. So therefore these may be the causes of the children not coming to schools. Of course, the teachers are not practicing punishment kind of things, but still a teacher can think of these lines. Even psychological punishment can also be a reason sometimes. Now, based on this, the possible causes, one has to move towards action hypothesis. That is hypothesis. In action research, we simply call it action hypothesis. Without guessing the possible causes, the teacher or the researcher here cannot plan the remedy for the problem. And hypothesis is a hunch basically, or it's simply a guess, or it's a tentative solution you can consider. It could be inference, or it's a supposition to be tested by empirical evidence. The hypothesis formulated in action research, again, as I said, is an action research that could be tested. Now, the good characteristics of an action hypothesis, the very important thing is finally the researcher, the teacher who is conducting this research is trying to test the hypothesis. So hypothesis has to have some good characteristics. They have been listed as logically related to the problem. The hypothesis that you frame should be logically, the very common sense approach, it says it should be logically related to the problem, and it should be testable in the classroom situations. It has to be easily doable. It has to be testable. If you frame some hypothesis, it has to be testable, and it has to be clearly stated without ambiguity. That is very important. And hypothesis has to be directly stated in terms of expected outcomes. Should not be generalized statements. Many times we tend to have generalized statements, and testable within reasonable short time. There is no fixed time, but still it has to be the hypothesis that you have framed has to be tested, or it should be testable within, say for example, you are in a semester time, like for example, a maximum of 3 months time should be all right when you talk about a hypothesis. How to formulate an action hypothesis? Now, the investigator should have a thorough knowledge about the problem, and as we have been talking that action research is a practitioner's research. It's the research conducted by the person who is facing this problem, who is insider to this problem. Therefore, he will have a thorough understanding of the problem, and he should be clear about the desired goal, what the solutions towards which we are moving, that also he has to be very clear, and one has to make a real effort to look at the problem in new ways other than the regular practices. Maybe coming out of the conventional thinking also should be kept in mind when you formulate hypothesis. Give importance for imaginative and speculation too sometimes. Think of many alternative solutions. Thoroughly examine the conditions, context in which the problem exists, and then state the action hypothesis. This is very important. Most of the time teachers are very well situated to comment on the real situations that they themselves are facing or the children are facing when we talk about some pinpointed action research problems. How to state an action hypothesis? Let us see this. See, there are a few steps we can understand. For example, examine a number of possible causes of the pinpointed problem, as we have seen. Say for example, there are 4 causes that we have listed. Then study the problem closely to identify the causes which are most likely the real ones. Think a suitable program or strategy. At this stage, it is very important. Think a suitable program or strategy, change in the regular practice as remedies. That has to be considered, and then state an action hypothesis for the selected behavior with the possible remedy in an appropriate form. In what ways an action hypothesis be stated? It could be declarative form, it could be predictive form, it could be question form, or even it could be null form. Declarative form example can be, for example, with positive relationship between the two factors identified, being the cause and the other being the effect. This is also called as a directional hypothesis, as we all know. In the case of predictive form, action hypothesis clearly predicting the expected outcome which would emerge after the action plan is implemented can be stated using if and then statements. When we talk about question form, it's very simple. Like for example, questions can be raised as action hypothesis as what would be the result of the intended action plan. And when we talk about null hypothesis, like for example, a null hypothesis states that no relationship exists between the factors considered in the problem. This form is mostly used when rigorously statistical techniques are to be used and not in the action research, of course. Examples of action hypothesis are predictive form. For example, if the grade 3 students receive a drill work in the chapter addition of whole numbers, their progress will be better in arithmetic. This predictive form of action hypothesis is in correspondence, in relation with the problem that we have identified in example number 1. If you see the example number 2, the declaration form, let us go to the declaration form for example number 2 are the same example. Let us say for example, a drill work program in the chapter addition of whole numbers for grade 3 students will cause better progress in arithmetic. The same thing in the question form can also be put as to what extent a drill work program in the chapter addition of whole numbers for grade 3 students will improve their progress in arithmetic. Now, the problem area was irregularity in attendance, submission of class records. Pinpointed problems, say for example, how to motivate pupils to attend the class regularly. If we do analysis, say for example, causes are distance from home, other engagement, indifference, bad company, lack of interest in learning, lack of preparation, lack of effective supervision on the part of teachers, influence of the home. These could be causes. Now when we are trying to analyze, it could be fact or speculation. Sometimes, say for example, distance from home may be fact. Other engagement may be speculation. We don't know whether it is true or not. Indifference, again it cannot be a fact, it may be speculation. For example, lack of effective supervision may be a fact. It's not speculation because the teacher himself is saying. Then influence of home again is a speculation. With this cause and factor or speculation, we need to look at the evidence. For the fact, you have to inquire. By inquiry, you can establish whether distance from home is a real cause, or other engagement also can be inquired and we can find out. With the causes like for example, indifference, bad company, lack of interest, we can inquire. Check of class records can be done, check of school records can be done, and lack of effective supervision, you can inquire. The head teachers, the teachers can inquire. And influence of home, maybe we need to talk to parents opinion. Then finally, can I affect, if say for example indifference, yes, if it is there, then can I intervene? Or bad company, can I affect, if say for example, if yes I can, the bad company can be. For example, can I influence the cause of the home if I talk to parents? So this way the solution to the problem that has been identified can come out of the analysis. And action hypothesis, say for example, if I request my colleagues to check irregular attendance, if I contact the parents, if I appreciate the regular students and reward, I will be able to make the students attend the class regularly. I am repeating, if I request my colleagues to check irregular attendance, if I contact the parents, if I appreciate the regular students and reward, I will be able to make the students attend the class regularly. On the basis of this, we have to move further to the action plan. Actual action plan involves 4 stages, that is baseline data we need. We need from where the sources of data you are collecting, and you need tools for collecting the data, and also action program and time chart, the time limit that has to be understood. When we talk about the baseline data, we first of all we need to find out how many pupils come late. For example, coming late is a problem. Then to find out how many come late on account of domestic inconvenience, and to find out on what days they are irregular, for example, and to find out on what part of the day they are irregular. That can also be an important. So these come under the baseline data that we require. And when we say this is the data, this is the type of data we require, then what could be the sources of data? For example, students, boys, girls, the parents, the teachers, even the attendance register of the school will tell you about the data that we are looking at. When we say the sources of data, now tools of data collection, a questionnaire administered to the students to find out the domestic inconvenience could be useful here. Interviewing parents can also be a tool here. Now, with the help of this baseline data, sources of data, and tools for collecting data, now action program with the help of time chart can be, say for example, 2 months. If we implement our action program for 2 months, maybe we will be able to affect the irregular attendance of the class. This can be considered as an action program in relation to the time chart. For this, we need tools and techniques. We need questionnaires, for example. We may use interviews. We may sometimes use checklist interaction schedules. We may use anecdotal records. We can use field notes, even sometimes tape recordings could be our tools and techniques. And actual data collection, analysis and interpretation has to follow. Before I conclude, when I was talking, this action research can be very interestingly used by anyone who is dealing with his own social situations. That is why its action research is very well called as a practitioner's research. In this class, we try to cover meaning and characteristics of action research. We try to understand problem selection in action research. We also try to understand in detail formulation of action hypothesis. Though we talked less about the tools and techniques in action research, we did not talk about how action research proposal can be prepared. That can also be done, and very importantly, how exactly we do data collection, analysis and interpretation. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best.